When the wedding invitation arrived in my mailbox on a Tuesday afternoon, I held it in my hands for a long time before I opened it. The envelope was heavy, expensive cardstock, the kind I could never afford when I was raising my daughter alone. Cream-colored with gold embossing. Beautiful. I remember thinking how proud I was that Emma had found someone who could give her the life I never could. I opened it carefully, wanting to preserve it. Inside, the invitation was even more elegant. Formal calligraphy announced Emma Grace Montgomery and Harrison Charles Whitmore III would be united in marriage. There would be a ceremony at the Whitmore estate, followed by a reception. Black tie optional. I read it 3 times, smiling, my eyes getting misty. My baby girl was getting married. And then I saw it. At the bottom of the invitation, in smaller print, there was a note card. Cream-colored like the invitation itself. It said, regarding catering arrangements and staff assignments for the Whitmore Montgomery wedding. My name was listed under kitchen staff service personnel. Not mother of the bride. Not family seating. Not even a regular guest. Catering staff. I sat down at my kitchen table. The same scratched formica table where Emma had done her homework for 18 years, where I'd helped her fill out college applications, where we'd celebrated every small victory with whatever I could afford to cook. My hands were shaking as I held that card. There had to be a mistake. I called Emma immediately. The phone rang 4 times before she answered, and I could hear the brightness in her voice fade when she realized it was me. Mom. Sweetheart, I just got your invitation, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I think there might have been some confusion with the printing. There's this card about catering staff. Oh. A long pause. Yeah. About that. The way she said it, flat, resigned, told me everything. This wasn't a mistake. Emma, I don't understand. Another pause. I could hear voices in the background. Someone laughing. Music playing. She was at Harrison's family home, I realized. She was always at Harrison's family home these days. Can we talk about this later, Mom? I'm kind of in the middle of something. No, I said quietly. We can't talk about it later. I need you to explain to me why my name is listed under kitchen staff for your wedding. I heard her sigh. Harrison's family. They have very specific ideas about the wedding. About appearances. His mother is on all these charity boards, and there are going to be a lot of important people there. I'm your mother, Emma. I know that. Her voice cracked slightly. But Harrison's family thinks. They think it would be better if you had a role. An official capacity. So people don't ask questions. Questions about what? She didn't answer right away. In the silence, I could hear my own heartbeat. Questions about your job. About where I come from. Harrison's mother said it would be easier this way. She said you'd be more comfortable working the event anyway, since that's what you do. What I do? For 23 years, I'd worked every catering job, every cleaning service, every weekend shift I could find. I'd worked 3 jobs at once to pay for Emma's braces, her piano lessons, her college application fees. I'd served hors d'oeuvres at country clubs and wedding receptions. Beautiful events I could never afford for myself. While Emma slept in the car in her car seat, then her booster seat, then eventually doing homework in the back seat while I worked. I'd served drinks to people who never looked me in the eye. I'd cleaned bathrooms at corporate events where the decorations cost more than my yearly rent. I'd smiled and said, "Yes, ma'am, and right away, sir," while my feet ached and my back throbbed and I thought about Emma's future. I'd done it all so she wouldn't have to. "Emma," I said slowly, "are you ashamed of me?" "No." She said it too quickly. "Mom, it's not like that. It's just, Harrison's family is different. They come from money. Real money. And his mother said." "I don't care what his mother said." "Well, I do." Her voice rose, defensive now. "I'm marrying into this family. I have to care what they think. I have to fit in. And having my mother there in some cheap dress from JCPenney, telling everyone about her catering jobs and her night shifts." She stopped abruptly. I could hear her breathing on the other end of the line. I looked down at my hands. Calloused. Weathered. The hands that had held her when she was born, that had braided her hair before school, that had worked themselves raw so she could have everything I never did. "I see." I said quietly. Mom. No, I understand. You need me to be invisible at your wedding. You need me to serve the guests instead of sitting with family. Because I embarrass you. That's not fair. What's not fair? I said. And my voice was steady now, perfectly calm. Is that I spent 23 years giving you everything, and now you're asking me to pretend I don't exist. I'm not asking you not to exist. I'm asking you to help. To be part of the day in a way that works for everyone. For everyone except me. There was a long silence. I could hear that music in the background again, something classical and elegant. The kind of music that would play at the Whitmore estate during a ceremony I would watch from the kitchen. I have to go, Emma said finally. Harrison's mother is calling me. Emma. But she'd already hung up. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that, holding the cream-colored invitation with its perfect calligraphy. The afternoon light faded to evening. Somewhere in my small apartment, the refrigerator hummed. A car alarm went off outside. Life continued around me while I tried to understand how I'd become someone my own daughter needed to hide. That night I didn't sleep. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of Emma's childhood, looking for where I'd gone wrong. I remembered the day I found out I was pregnant. 23 years ago, sitting in a clinic bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines. Emma's father had left 2 weeks earlier, just packed his bags and walked out when I told him I might be expecting. No forwarding address. No courrier. Just gone. I was 22 years old, working as a grocery store cashier, living in a studio apartment with water stains on the ceiling. I had $847 in my checking account, and no family to turn to. My own mother had passed when I was 19, and my father, well, he'd made it clear years before that he had no interest in being involved in my life. I could have made a different choice that day. But when I looked at that positive test, I felt something shift inside me. This baby, my baby, would have everything I didn't. Love. Stability. A mother who showed up. A mother who stayed. So I worked. God, how I worked. I took a job at a catering company because the tips were better. I learned to smile while carrying trays of champagne, to disappear into the background of other people's celebrations, to work 12-hour shifts in heels that left my feet bleeding. When Emma was born, I took her with me when I could. My boss, Gloria, let me keep a playpen in the back office. Emma took her first steps in a country club kitchen, while I was plating salmon. She said her first word, Mama, during a wedding reception. She learned to read sitting at a prep table while I chopped vegetables for a corporate luncheon. And I told myself it was worth it. Every aching muscle, every missed meal, every night I fell asleep still in my work clothes. It was worth it because Emma would have opportunities. Emma would go to college. Emma would never have to serve drinks to people who looked through her like she was invisible. I put her in good schools, even though it meant working 3 jobs. I bought her the clothes she needed to fit in, even if I wore the same 4 outfits year after year. When she wanted to take piano lessons, I found a teacher who would trade lessons for catering help. When she wanted to join the debate team, I paid the fees and drove her to every tournament, waiting in parking lots because I couldn't afford the registration to watch. I was at every parent-teacher conference, every school play, every award ceremony. I might have been wearing a uniform from my shift, might have smelled like kitchen grease, might have had flour in my hair, but I was there. And Emma was brilliant. Straight A's. Scholarships. She got into a good university, and I cried when she opened that acceptance letter. Full ride. She wouldn't have to struggle like I did. That's when things started to change. College transformed Emma in ways I hadn't expected. She came home less and less. When she did visit, she seemed uncomfortable in our small apartment, commenting on the noise from the neighbors, the outdated appliances, the fact that we didn't have central air conditioning. She stopped inviting friends over. She stopped telling me about her life. By her junior year, she'd started dating Harrison. She mentioned him casually at first, just someone from her business ethics class. But I could hear something different in her voice when she said his name. Hope maybe. Or possibility. The first time she brought him to meet me, I'd cleaned the apartment for 3 days straight. I'd borrowed a nicer tablecloth from Gloria. I'd cooked Emma's favorite meal, chicken parmesan, from scratch, the way I used to make it for her birthday. Harrison was polite. Handsome in that effortless way wealthy people are, with good teeth and clear skin, and clothes that probably cost more than my monthly rent. He shook my hand and called me ma'am and complimented the meal. But I caught him looking around the apartment with barely concealed surprise. Taking in the second-hand furniture, the cracked tile in the kitchen, the cheap prints on the walls instead of real art. Emma was tense the entire dinner, laughing too loud at Harrison's jokes, steering conversation away from anything that might reveal too much about how we'd lived. When I mentioned my work, casually just talking about a wedding I'd catered that weekend, she changed the subject so quickly it was like I'd said something obscene. After they left, I found a tip on the kitchen counter. $200 bills, folded neatly and tucked under a napkin. Like I was staff. Like this had been a service, not a mother meeting her daughter's boyfriend. I called Emma the next morning. Did Harrison leave this money? Mom, he was just being nice. I'm not a charity case, Emma. I didn't say you were. But you're always talking about how tight money is, and Harrison's family has plenty, so what's the harm in? The harm is that I'm your mother, not your waitress. She'd gone quiet then. Maybe if you didn't want to be treated like a waitress, you shouldn't have spent your whole life being one. The words hung between us like smoke. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. I didn't mean that, she said quickly. Mom. I'm sorry. Harrison's family is different. They're sophisticated. And sometimes when you talk about your jobs, or wearing your uniform places, it's embarrassing, okay? Embarrassing. That word stayed with me long after we hung up. I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror that night. 45 years old, with premature gray in my hair and permanent exhaustion in my eyes. I looked like what I was. A woman who'd worked herself to the bone. For my daughter, who was embarrassed by me. 3 months passed between that phone call about the wedding invitation and the actual event. 3 months where Emma barely called. 3 months where I had to decide what to do. I could have refused. I could have told her no. Told her she couldn't erase me from her life like I was a mistake she needed to correct. I could have made a scene, insisted on my rightful place as mother of the bride, demanded the respect I'd earned. But I didn't. Instead, I called the wedding coordinator, a crisp-voiced woman named Patricia who spoke to me like I was, indeed, just catering staff, and confirmed my assignment. I would be working the reception, serving drinks during cocktail hour, circulating with hors d'oeuvres, staying in the kitchen, out of sight, where I belonged. Perfect, Patricia said. We need reliable people. And Emma mentioned you have extensive catering experience. Extensive catering experience. That's how my daughter described 23 years of sacrifice. Yes, I said. Ido. I didn't tell Emma I'd accepted the role. She didn't call to ask. The silence between us grew wider with each passing week, until it felt like we were strangers who happened to share blood and history and nothing else. But I wasn't idle during those 3 months. I spent my evenings going through old photo albums, boxes of memories I'd kept stored in my closet. Pictures of Emma as a baby, her tiny face scrunched up in my arms. Emma's first day of kindergarten, wearing a dress I'd sewn myself because the store-bought ones were too expensive. Emma at her 8th grade graduation, beaming with her honor roll certificate. Emma, moving into her college dorm, trying not to cry as we said goodbye. I found receipts too. Thousands of them. Every school fee, every textbook, every deposit and tuition payment. I'd kept them all. Not because I was saving them for anything, but because I couldn't quite believe I'd managed it. Couldn't believe I'd actually gotten her through college without debt. There were report cards covered in teachers' notes. Emma is a joy to have in class. Emma shows exceptional promise. Emma is a natural leader. There were programs from every school play she'd been in, every concert, every award ceremony. My work schedule written in the margins, times I'd had to negotiate with my bosses to leave early, shifts I'd traded to make sure I could be there. There were birthday cards I'd made by hand when money was too tight for store-bought. Construction paper and markers and glitter. They looked homemade and cheap, but Emma had kept them all through the years, saved them in a shoebox under her bed. Or at least, she had saved them. I wondered if she'd thrown them away when she moved into Harrison's world. If they were too embarrassing now, too evidence of where she came from. I made copies of everything, scanned photos, organized them chronologically, and slowly, carefully, I put together something I'd been planning since that phone call. A montage. Every sacrifice, every moment, every proof that I had loved her with everything I had. I contacted my friend Marcus, who did DJ work on the side for extra money. We'd worked dozens of events together over the years. He owed me a favor. I'd covered his setup once when he had the flu, worked a double shift so he wouldn't lose the gig. I need your help, I told him, sitting in his small studio apartment surrounded by sound equipment. And I need you not to ask too many questions. Marcus looked at me over his coffee. He was in his 50s, divorced, with a daughter he barely saw who lived with her mother in another state. He understood complicated family dynamics. What do you need? I explained it to him. The wedding, my role as staff, and what I wanted him to do during the mother-daughter dance. The one tradition that even Harrison's family couldn't erase, though they'd probably tried. Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "You sure about this?" "No," I admitted. "But I'm doing it anyway." He nodded slowly. "Okay. I'll need the files. And I'll need to know the exact setup of the venue." "I can get you that. I'm working the event. I'll have access to everything." "And after?" he asked. "After you do this?" I looked at my hands. These hands that had worked so hard for so long. "After I start over." The day of the wedding arrived with perfect weather. Sunny, 72 degrees, with a light breeze that made the trees around the Whitmore estate sway gently. It was the kind of day people paid wedding planners thousands of dollars to guarantee, and nature had delivered it for free. I arrived at 6 in the morning with the rest of the catering staff. We entered through the service entrance. Not the grand front doors where guests would arrive, but the plain back door that led directly to the kitchen. I'd been through these kinds of doors 1,000 times in my life. They all looked the same. Unmarked. Utilitarian. Invisible. The kitchen was industrial and immaculate, bigger than my entire apartment. Stainless steel everywhere. Top-of-the-line appliances. A staff of 20 moving in coordinated chaos, prepping food for 300 guests. I was assigned to the bar service team. We'd be circulating during cocktail hour with trays of champagne and signature drinks. Later, during dinner, we transitioned to wine service. I knew the routine by heart. The head caterer, a stern woman named Michelle, gave us our instructions. You do not speak to guests unless spoken to. You do not linger. You move efficiently and quietly. You are part of the scenery, not the event. Understood. Everyone nodded. I nodded too. Part of the scenery. That's all I'd ever been in Emma's new life. We changed into our uniforms, black slacks, white button-down shirts, black bow ties. Professional. I caught my reflection in a bathroom mirror as I adjusted my bow tie. I looked exactly like what I was. Hired help. I wondered if Emma would even recognize me. The ceremony was at 3 o'clock. By 2:30, guests were beginning to arrive. Expensive cars pulling up the circular drive, valets in burgundy vests rushing to open doors, women in designer dresses and men in tailored suits stepping out like they were walking a red carpet. I watched from the kitchen window while I prepared my tray of champagne flutes. I recognized some faces from magazines, from news articles, business executives, politicians, old money families whose names were on buildings downtown. This was Harrison's world. A world where people didn't work weddings, they attended them. At 2:45, I got my first glimpse of Emma. She was in the bridal suite. A converted sunroom on the second floor with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens. I shouldn't have been up there, but I'd volunteered to deliver a tray of mimosas to the bridal party, just for the chance to see her. I knocked softly. A bridesmaid answered, one of Emma's college friends. A girl I'd met once or twice, though she didn't seem to recognize me in my uniform. "Drinks," I said quietly, holding up the tray. "Oh, perfect. Just set them on the table." I entered the suite. It was beautiful, all white and gold, with fresh flowers everywhere and a makeup artist working on one of the bridesmaids. Soft music played from hidden speakers. It smelled like expensive perfume and hairspray. And there, in front of a three-way mirror, stood Emma, my daughter. She was breathtaking. Her wedding dress was something out of a fairy tale, ivory silk with delicate lace, fitted perfectly to her figure, with a long train that pooled behind her like water. Her hair was swept up in an elegant twist, small flowers woven through it. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like she belonged in this world, like she'd been born to it. I set the tray down carefully, trying not to make noise. But as I turned to leave, our eyes met in the mirror. For just a moment, Emma's perfect composure cracked. I saw recognition, then something else, guilt maybe, or regret. Her mouth opened slightly, like she wanted to say something. But Harrison's mother swept into the room before either of us could speak. Victoria Whitmore was everything I wasn't, tall, elegant, with perfectly styled silver hair and pearls that probably cost more than a car. She moved through the room like she owned it, which of course she did. "Emma, darling, we need you for photos in 5 minutes," she said, then noticed me standing by the door. Her eyes flickered over me, my uniform, my sensible shoes, my plain face, and dismissed me in an instant. "You can go." Not, "Thank you." Just, "You can go." I nodded and left, but not before I caught Emma's reflection in the mirror one more time. She was watching me leave, her expression unreadable. Then Victoria said something that made her laugh, and the moment was broken. I went back downstairs to join the other servers. The ceremony was held in the garden, beneath a massive white tent strung with thousands of tiny lights. Rows of white chairs faced an altar covered in roses, easily $10,000 worth of flowers. A string quartet played Pachelbel's canon as guests took their seats. We servers stood at the edges, ready to circulate with champagne once the ceremony ended. I positioned myself near the back, where I could see but wouldn't be noticed. The music changed. Everyone stood. And Emma appeared at the end of the aisle on the arm of Harrison's father, a distinguished man in his 60s who would walk her down the aisle, because Emma had no father to do it. My job. My right. Given to a man she'd known for less than 2 years. I watched my daughter walk toward her future, watched her smile at Harrison waiting at the altar, watched her become part of a family that had decided I wasn't good enough to sit in those white chairs. The ceremony was short and traditional. The officiant talked about love and commitment, about 2 families becoming one. Victoria dabbed her eyes with a monogrammed handkerchief. Harrison's father beamed with pride. No one mentioned the mother who'd raised the bride alone. No one acknowledged the sacrifices that had gotten Emma to this moment. When the officiant said, "You may kiss the bride," everyone applauded. Emma and Harrison walked back down the aisle as husband and wife, and the guests followed them toward the cocktail hour. That's when we went to work. I circulated with my tray of champagne, weaving through clusters of guests who didn't see me. I heard fragments of conversation. Business deals, vacation homes, stock portfolios. I heard people complimenting Harrison's family on the beautiful wedding, on how lovely the bride was, on what a perfect match they made. I heard Victoria tell someone, "Emma comes from very humble beginnings, but she's got excellent instincts. She'll do well in our family." Humble beginnings. Like I was a problem Emma had overcome. A woman in a blue dress took a glass from my tray without looking at me. "Where did they meet?" she asked her companion. "College. I think her mother was in service? Something like that. But the girl's very bright. Full scholarship. How fortunate for her." They moved away, and I stood there holding my tray, invisible. Dinner was served at 7. 300 guests seated at round tables draped in champagne-colored linens, each centerpiece a work of art. The first course was lobster bisque, then seared scallops, then filet mignon with truffle butter, then a palate cleanser, then dessert, a 6-tier cake decorated with sugar flowers that looked so real I almost believed they were. I poured wine. I cleared plates. I refilled water glasses. I did my job perfectly, the way I'd done it for 23 years, the way that had paid for Emma's braces and her books and her application fees. And all the while, I watched Emma at the head table, laughing with Harrison, accepting congratulations from guests, playing the role of the perfect bride in the perfect wedding. She never once looked in my direction. At 8:30, the DJ Marcus, though no one here knew we were friends, announced it was time for the special dances. First, Harrison and Emma would share their first dance as husband and wife. Then the father-daughter dance. Then the mother-son dance. And finally, the mother-daughter dance. I was in the corner of the tent when the announcement came, collecting empty champagne flutes. My heart started pounding so hard I thought people might hear it. Harrison and Emma took the floor for their first dance. Ed Sheeran's Perfect played through the speakers, predictable, sweet, romantic. Emma looked up at her new husband with adoration, and he spun her gently under the lights. Everyone watched with misty eyes. Then Harrison's father cut in for the father-daughter dance. Butterfly kisses played, and I had to turn away. That should have been my moment. That was supposed to be the father figure who'd been there all along. But Harrison's father had only known Emma for 2 years. 2 years versus 23. Victoria and Harrison danced to a song for Mama. And I watched her hold her son close, watched her smile with pride and joy. I didn't begrudge her that moment. She'd raised Harrison. She'd been there. She'd earned it. But so had I. Finally, Marcus announced. And now, Emma would like to share a dance with her mother. The tent went quiet. Guests looked around, confused, whispering. Where was the mother of the bride? Several people glanced at Victoria, thinking maybe she'd dance with Emma too. Emma stood alone on the dance floor, her expression uncertain. She was looking toward the kitchen entrance. Looking for me. I set down my tray. My hands were shaking. Michelle, the head caterer, gave me a sharp look. What are you doing? I'm dancing with my daughter, I said quietly. I walked across the tent. Every step felt like miles. 300 pairs of eyes turned to watch as this woman in a server's uniform crossed the dance floor toward the bride. I heard the whispers start immediately. Who is that? Is that a member of the staff? Why is the caterer? I reached Emma. Up close, I could see tears already forming in her eyes. She looked terrified. Ashamed. Caught. Mom, she whispered. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't respond. I just held out my hand. She took it. Marcus started the music. But it wasn't the traditional mother-daughter song Emma had probably chosen. Instead, the opening notes of a soft piano piece began to play, something instrumental and emotional. And then, on the massive projection screen that had been set up for toasts and speeches, images began to appear. The first photo, me at 22, holding newborn Emma in a hospital bed. I looked exhausted and young and overwhelmed, but I was smiling. The date was printed in the corner. March 15, 2002. Emma gasped. The tent went completely silent except for the music. The second photo, Emma's first birthday. We were in our tiny studio apartment, and I'd made her a cake from a box mix. It was lopsided and decorated with too much frosting, but Emma's face was covered in chocolate, and she was laughing. I was behind her, my arms wrapped around her, wearing my grocery store uniform because I'd come straight from work. The third photo, Emma's first day of kindergarten. The dress I'd sewn by hand, because I couldn't afford the ones at the store. Emma holding a homemade sign that said first day. My handwriting. Photo after photo appeared on that screen. Emma at 7 missing her front teeth, holding up a spelling test with a gold star. Me in the background, still in my catering uniform, giving her a thumbs up. Emma at 10, at her piano recital, while I stood in the back of the room because I'd arrived late from work and all the seats were taken. Emma at 13, sullen and teenage, while I smiled tiredly beside her at some school event. Each photo had a small caption. Not anything dramatic. Just facts. Worked 3 jobs this year to pay for piano lessons. Came straight from a 16-hour catering shift to attend 5th grade graduation. Saved for 8 months to afford the class trip to Washington, D.C. Then came the receipts. Blown up on that massive screen for everyone to see. Tuition payment. $8,450. Receipt dated September 2019. Textbooks. $847. Receipt dated August 2020. Laptop for college. $1,200. Receipt dated July 2020. Paid in installments. Dorm deposit. $500. Application fees for 12 universities. $840. SAT prep course. $600. Every single expense documented. Years of them, scrolling by with the music. And then the photos changed to more recent ones. Emma's college graduation. She was in her cap and gown, beaming, holding her diploma. I stood beside her in a dress I'd borrowed from Gloria, looking proud and tired. Emma had her arm around me. The caption read, "Graduated debt-free because Mom worked every extra shift she could find." Then a photo I'd forgotten existed. Someone had taken it at that dinner when Emma first brought Harrison to meet me. I was smiling, serving the chicken parmesan, trying so hard to make everything perfect. Emma was looking at me with an expression I remembered now. Something between embarrassment and apology. The caption read, "The last time I cooked for my daughter before she decided I was too embarrassing to acknowledge." The music swelled. The screen went black for a moment. Then one final image appeared. It was Emma's own handwriting, from a Mother's Day card she'd given me when she was 9. I'd kept it all these years, tucked in a box with everything else. It read, "Dear Mom, you are the best mom in the world. You work so hard for me. When I grow up, I want to be just like you. I love you more than anything. Love, Emma." The music faded to silence. The tent was so quiet I could hear the breeze moving through the trees outside. Emma was sobbing in my arms. Emma was shaking. Her carefully applied makeup ran in dark streams down her face, and her breath came in short, broken gasps. She tried to speak, but no words came out, just these small, wounded sounds that reminded me of when she was a baby and couldn't yet tell me what hurt. I held her there on the dance floor, while 300 people watched in absolute silence. Her expensive wedding dress wrinkled under my hands. Her flower crown sat crooked on her head. She didn't look like a Whitmore anymore. She looked like my daughter. "I'm sorry," she finally managed to choke out. "Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." I could feel every eye in that tent on us. I could feel Victoria Whitmore's horror, Harrison's confusion, the guests' shock and fascination. This wasn't the elegant society wedding they'd come to witness. This was raw and real and messy, everything the Whitmores had tried to avoid. I leaned close to Emma's ear and whispered, "I know you are, sweetheart." Then I stepped back. I let go of her hands. I looked at my daughter, this beautiful young woman I'd raised, who'd been so desperate to belong to this world that she'd tried to erase where she came from. And I felt something settle in my chest. Something like peace. "You made your choice," I said softly, but in the silence of the tent, everyone could hear me. "You chose this family, this life, this version of yourself that doesn't include me. I understand why you did it. I even understand why you thought you had to." Emma reached for me, but I took another step back. "But I won't be invisible anymore, Emma. Not even for you." I turned to the crowd then. All those faces in their expensive clothes, holding their champagne glasses, sitting at their perfectly decorated tables. Some looked uncomfortable. Some looked sympathetic. Victoria Whitmore looked absolutely furious, her face pale except for 2 spots of red on her cheeks. I didn't owe any of them an explanation, but I gave one anyway. "My name is Sarah Montgomery," I said, my voice steady and clear. "I'm Emma's mother. I raised her alone from the day she was born. I worked as a caterer, a house cleaner, a waitress, any job I could find, so she could have opportunities one never did. I paid for every piano lesson, every school trip, every college application. I got her to graduation day without a single student loan." I paused, looking back at Emma. She had her hands over her face, shoulders shaking. And tonight, I was asked to serve drinks at my own daughter's wedding because her new family thought I wasn't good enough to sit with the guests. Because I was an embarrassment. Because working-class people are supposed to stay invisible when wealthy people are celebrating. Victoria stood up from her table. "This is completely inappropriate." "You're right," I interrupted, and my voice carried across the tent. "It is inappropriate. It's inappropriate to ask a mother to pretend she doesn't exist at her child's wedding. It's inappropriate to make someone ashamed of the sacrifices that gave their daughter everything. It's inappropriate to decide someone's worth based on how much money they have instead of how much love they gave." I turned back to Emma one last time. She'd lowered her hands and was staring at me with red, swollen eyes. "I love you," I told her. "I will always love you. But I'm done making myself smaller so you can feel bigger. I'm done apologizing for the life I lived to give you yours." I pulled an envelope from my pocket. I'd kept it tucked in my waistband all evening. I walked over and placed it on the head table in front of Emma and Harrison. "That's my wedding gift to you," I said. "It's a check for $10,000. Every penny I had saved. I was going to use it for a down payment on a small house someday, but I want you to have it instead. Consider it payment for all the years I embarrassed you." Emma made a broken sound. "Mom, no. Use it for your honeymoon. Or put it toward a house. Or donate it to charity. I don't care. But know that it represents 3,500 hours of work. 3,500 hours of standing on my feet, smiling at people who didn't see me, serving food at parties I could never afford to attend. Hours I spent building a future for you." I looked at Harrison then. He was pale, staring at the envelope like it might bite him. "Take care of her," I said. "Love her. Give her the life she wants. But don't you ever, ever, make her ashamed of where she came from again. Because where she came from is me, and I'm not ashamed of a single thing I did for her." Harrison swallowed hard and nodded. "Yes, ma'am." I walked back across that dance floor. The guests parted like water, creating a clear path to the exit. No one spoke. No one tried to stop me. I passed Michelle, the head caterer, who was watching with wide eyes. "I'm done for the evening," I told her. She just nodded. I passed Marcus at the DJ booth. He gave me a small, sad smile and a thumbs up. I told him this might be the end of everything between Emma and me. He'd asked if I was sure I wanted to do it. I'd said yes. I still said yes. I walked out of that tent into the cool evening air. The sun had set while we were inside, and the sky was deep purple, scattered with early stars. I could hear the ocean in the distance. The Whitmore estate was on the coast, of course. Everything about their world was beautiful and expensive and perfect. I got in my car, a 15-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door, and a check engine light that came on occasionally. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, my hands on the steering wheel, and waited to feel something. Regret, maybe. Or satisfaction. Or vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. And free. I drove home in silence. No radio, no music, just the sound of the engine and the road beneath my tires. The drive from the Whitmore estate back to my apartment took 40 minutes, and with each mile, the world shifted back to something familiar. The manicured lawns and iron gates gave way to strip malls and apartment complexes. The luxury cars disappeared, replaced by practical sedans and pickup trucks. This was my world. It always had been. When I pulled into my apartment complex parking lot, I sat in the car for a long time. The building was old, with chipped paint and a flickering light over the entrance. Mrs. Chun from Tubi was sitting on her porch, smoking a cigarette. She waved at me, and I waved back. I climbed the stairs to my second-floor unit, no elevator in a building this old, and unlocked the 3 locks on my door. The apartment was dark and quiet. Small. The kitchen was barely big enough for one person. The living room furniture was second-hand. The bedroom was just large enough for a bed and a dresser. But it was mine. I'd paid for every inch of it with honest work. I changed out of my uniform, folding it carefully out of habit. Then I sat on my couch in sweatpants and an old t-shirt and stared at the wall. My phone was in my purse, turned off. I wasn't ready to face whatever messages might be waiting. The apartment felt different now. Emptier, maybe. For 23 years, every decision I'd made, every sacrifice, every extra shift, it had all been for Emma. She'd been the reason I pushed through exhaustion. The reason I kept going when I wanted to quit. The reason everything mattered. Now what? I got up and walked to the closet where I'd kept all those boxes of memories. Photos, receipts, report cards, handmade birthday cards. I'd gutted them to make that montage, but there was still so much left. A lifetime of evidence that I'd been a good mother. That I'd done everything I could. I pulled out one of Emma's old school projects, a poster she'd made in 3rd grade about my hero. It was covered in glitter and stickers, with a photo of me in the center surrounded by crayon drawings. She'd written, "My hero is my mom because she works hard and loves me and makes me laugh and is always there." I'd been there. Through every skin knee, every nightmare, every disappointment, every triumph. I'd been there when she learned to ride a bike, when she got her first period, when she had her heart broken by a boy in high school, when she opened that college acceptance letter, I'd been there for everything that mattered. Until I wasn't good enough anymore. I put the poster back in the box and closed the closet door. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat at my kitchen table and did something I hadn't done in 23 years. I made a plan for myself. Not for Emma. Not to support Emma or save for Emma or sacrifice for Emma. For me. I pulled out a notebook, one of those cheap composition books I use for grocery lists, and started writing. What did I want? What did Sarah Montgomery want, now that she didn't have to be just Emma's mother? The list started simple. Sleep past 6 a.m. Take a day off without feeling guilty. Buy new clothes that aren't from thrift stores. Learn something new, just because I want to. Then it got bigger. Go back to school. Travel somewhere I've never been. Find work I actually enjoy, not just work that pays bills. Build a life that's mine. I stared at that list for a long time. These were small things, ordinary things. Things most people took for granted. But to me they felt revolutionary. I'd spent 23 years being strong for Emma. Maybe it was time to be strong for myself. The sun was coming up when I finally turned on my phone. Immediately, it started buzzing with notifications. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. I scrolled through them slowly. 12 missed calls from Emma. 3 from Harrison. 1 from Victoria Whitmore, which surprised me. Dozens of texts from Emma. Mom, please call me. Mom, I'm so sorry. Please don't do this. I need to talk to you. I love you, please. I didn't respond. Not yet. I wasn't ready. There were also texts from numbers I didn't recognize. Later, I'd find out that someone at the wedding had recorded the whole thing on their phone. By morning, clips of the montage and my speech were circulating on social media. People were calling me brave. Calling Emma spoiled. Calling the Whitmores elitist. I didn't care about any of that. This wasn't about going viral or making a statement. This was about refusing to be erased. There was one voicemail that made me pause. It was from Gloria, my old boss from the catering company. I told her I was working Emma's wedding, though I hadn't explained the circumstances. Sarah. Her voice came through the speaker, warm and concerned. I heard what happened. Someone sent me a video. Honey, I'm so proud of you. I know that must have been the hardest thing you've ever done. Call me when you're ready. You've got family here who sees you. I played it twice, then saved it. Gloria was right. I did have family, not by blood, but by choice. Gloria, who'd let baby Emma sleep in the office. Marcus, who'd helped me with the montage. Mrs. Chun downstairs, who always saved me leftovers from her Sunday dinners. The other servers and kitchen staff I'd worked alongside for years, people who knew what it meant to work hard and stay invisible. They saw me. They'd always seen me. Maybe that was enough. 3 days passed. I took them off work, called in, something I almost never did, and just existed. I slept. I watched old movies. I ate meals sitting down instead of standing at the counter between shifts. I walked to the park and sat on a bench and watched the clouds. I didn't answer Emma's calls. On the 4th day, she showed up at my apartment. I heard the knock at 2 p.m. on a Thursday afternoon. Soft, hesitant. Not the confident knock of someone who expected to be welcomed. I looked through the peephole and saw Emma standing in the hallway. She wasn't wearing designer clothes or perfect makeup. She had on jeans and a sweater, her hair in a simple ponytail. No jewelry except her wedding ring. She looked young and scared, and so much like the little girl who used to knock on my bedroom door after a nightmare. I took a breath and opened the door. We stared at each other for a long moment. Her eyes were red-rimmed, like she'd been crying for days. Maybe she had. "Hi, Mom," she said quietly. "So, can I come in?" I stepped aside, and she entered the apartment, this small, humble space she'd been so embarrassed by. She looked around like she was seeing it for the first time. Or maybe seeing it honestly for the first time. "Do you want some tea?" I asked, because even now, even after everything, my instinct was to take care of her. "Yes, please." I made us both tea in my mismatched mugs, the ones I'd collected over the years from thrift stores and promotional giveaways. Emma sat at the kitchen table, in the same chair where she'd done thousands of hours of homework, and wrapped her hands around the warm mug like she needed something to hold on to. For a while, neither of us spoke. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of Mrs. Chen's television through the wall and the distant traffic outside. Finally, Emma said, "Harrison and I came back early from our honeymoon." I didn't respond. Just waited. We were supposed to go to Bali for 2 weeks. We left the day after the wedding, but I couldn't. I couldn't stop thinking about what I did, what I'd become. She looked down at her tea. "Harrison said we should come home, that I needed to talk to you." "Harrison said that?" She nodded. "He's a good person, Mom. Better than I've been. After you left the wedding, he asked me why I'd done it, why I'd treated you like that. And I didn't have a good answer." "What did you say?" "I said I was ashamed, that I wanted to fit into his world so badly that I convinced myself you didn't belong in it." Her voice cracked. "But the truth is, I was ashamed of myself, of how ungrateful I'd been, of how easily I'd let them make me believe that hard work and sacrifice were things to hide instead of honor." Tears were sliding down her cheeks now, but she didn't wipe them away. "Victoria told me that successful people don't dwell on where they came from, that the past doesn't matter as much as the future. And I believed her because it was easier than admitting the truth, that everything I have, everything I am, exists because you gave up everything for me." I felt my own eyes burning, but I kept my voice steady. "Emma, I never wanted you to feel guilty about having opportunities one didn't have. That was the whole point. I wanted you to have a better life. But not at the cost of pretending you didn't exist," she said fiercely. "Not at the cost of making you serve drinks at my wedding like you were nothing to me. Mom, you're everything to me. You've always been everything." "Then why?" The question came out sharper than I intended. "Why did you do it?" She was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was small. "Because they made it seem so reasonable. Victoria said it would be more comfortable for you to have a role, that you'd feel awkward sitting with guests you didn't know. Harrison's father said it would be less stressful if we didn't make a big deal about family dynamics. They made it sound like they were doing it for your sake, and I let myself believe them because it was easier than standing up for you." Standing up for me meant standing up to them. "Yes," she whispered. "And I was too much of a coward to do it." I looked at my daughter, this young woman I'd raised to be strong and confident and brave, and I saw her clearly. She wasn't a villain. She was a 23-year-old kid who'd made a terrible mistake, because she was desperate to belong. I'd been 23 once too. I remembered what it felt like to want acceptance so badly it hurt. "Victoria called me," I said. "Did you know that?" Emma's head snapped up. "What? 3 days ago. She left a voicemail." I pulled out my phone and played it. Victoria's crisp voice filled the kitchen. "Ms. Montgomery, this is Victoria Whitmore. I'm calling to apologize for the situation at the wedding. It was never my intention to cause you distress. I hope we can move past this unfortunate incident and maintain a cordial relationship for Emma and Harrison's sake." I stopped the playback. "Notice what's missing?" Emma frowned. "She doesn't actually say she was wrong." "No. She apologizes for my distress, for the situation. But not for asking me to be invisible at my own daughter's wedding. Not for making you ashamed of me. Not for deciding I wasn't good enough for their family." "Mom, I'm telling you this because you need to understand something, Emma. This is who they are. This is the family you married into. And if you stay in that world, you'll have to make choices about who you want to be within it." Emma's hands were shaking around her mug. "I know. I've been thinking about that a lot. And I told Victoria that she needed to actually apologize to you. A real apology, not that corporate non-apology. I told her that if she couldn't respect you, then she couldn't have a relationship with me." She looked up, meeting my eyes. She didn't take it well. "I imagine not. She said I was being dramatic, that I was letting one incident ruin our family unity. Harrison defended me, defended you, and she said he was being controlled by his wife." Emma laughed bitterly. "It got ugly, Mom. Really ugly. We left their house and we're staying at a hotel until we figure things out." I felt something in my chest, not satisfaction exactly, but something close. Emma was learning what I'd always known. That standing up for what's right often costs something. "What about Harrison?" I asked. How does he feel about all this? He's ashamed too. He said he should have stopped his mother, should have insisted you be treated like family. He wants to apologize to you himself, if you'll let him. I thought about that for a moment. He seems like a good man, Emma. Weak in the face of his mother, maybe, but good. He is good. And he's learning to be stronger. We both are. I reached across the table and took Emma's hand. Her skin was soft. She'd never had to work with her hands the way I had. Her nails were manicured, her ring finger heavy with diamonds. But underneath all that, she was still my daughter. I forgive you, I said. Emma's face crumpled. Just like that. No, not just like that. It's going to take time for me to trust you again. Time for us to rebuild what was broken. But Emma, I've loved you since the moment I knew you existed. That doesn't just go away, because you hurt me. I don't deserve. Stop, I said firmly. Don't make this about what you deserve. Make it about what you're going to do differently going forward. She nodded, wiping her eyes with her sleeve. I'm going to be better. I'm going to set boundaries with Victoria. I'm going to make sure Harrison understands that you're part of our family. Not an embarrassment, not a secret, but family. And I'm going to. She paused, struggling with the words. I'm going to learn who I am without trying to be who they want me to be. That's the hardest part, I said. Figuring out who you are when you're not performing for anyone. How did you do it? How did you always know who you were? I laughed softly. Emma, I didn't. For years, I only knew I was your mother. That was my whole identity. It's only now, after the wedding, that I'm starting to figure out who Sarah Montgomery is when she's not just Emma's mom. And who is she? I thought about my list, about those simple dreams I'd written down at 3 a.m. in my kitchen. I don't know yet. But I'm going to find out. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, drinking our tea. Then Emma said, I tried to give the check back. What? The $10,000. I tried to give it back to you. But the bank said you'd closed the account. I did, I said. I opened a new one. In my name only. That money is yours, Emma. I gave it freely. But it was your savings. Your house fund. And I chose to give it to you. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. That's what makes it a gift. I paused. Though if you really want to do something for me, you could put it toward therapy. For both of us. Separately and together. Emma's eyes widened. You want to go to therapy? I think we need to. I need to learn how to have an identity beyond being your mother. You need to learn how to have a spine when it comes to your in-laws. And we both need to learn how to have an adult relationship with each other. Not just a mother-child dynamic. Okay, Emma said immediately. Yes. I'll find someone. I'll set it up. Good. She hesitated, then asked, will you come to Sunday dinner? At our apartment? It'll just be me and Harrison. No one else. I want to. I want to start over. I want to cook for you the way you cooked for me all those years. I thought about it. About walking into Emma's new life, her new home, her new world. About whether I could do that without feeling like I was back in that serving role, invisible and diminished. But Emma was looking at me with hope and fear and love, and I remembered what I'd told myself. She wasn't a villain. She was a young woman learning how to be better. Yes, I said. I'll come to dinner. But Emma. Yeah. If Harrison's mother shows up uninvited, I'm leaving. And so are you. She smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd arrived. Deal. Emma left an hour later, after we'd talked about smaller things. Her apartment. Her job. She'd started working at a nonprofit, something she'd never mentioned to me before. Harrison's work. Normal mother-daughter conversation. The kind we used to have before everything got complicated. At the door, she hugged me tight. I love you, Mom. I'm so sorry for everything. I love you too, baby. And I'm proud of you for trying to make this right. Even after especially after. It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. You're showing that courage now. After she left, I stood in my doorway for a while, watching the hallway. The flickering light. The worn carpet. The scuff marks on the walls from years of people moving in and out. This building would never be featured in a magazine. No one would call it elegant or sophisticated. But it was honest. It was real. And for now it was home. I went back inside and looked at that list I'd made. All those dreams I'd never let myself have. Then I picked up my phone and did something I'd been thinking about for days. I called Gloria. "Sarah," she answered on the second ring. "How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I said. "Actually, I'm better than okay. And I have a question for you." "Shoot." "That culinary program at the community college. The one you mentioned a few years ago. Is it too late to apply for spring semester?" There was a pause, then Gloria's voice came back warm and excited. "You want to go to culinary school? I've spent 23 years serving other people's food. I think it's time I learned to make my own." Gloria laughed, delighted. "Sarah Montgomery, I thought you'd never ask. I'll send you the application information tonight. And honey, you're going to be amazing." That night, I sat at my kitchen table. The same scratched formica where Emma had learned to read, where we'd celebrated her scholarships, where I'd cried over bills I couldn't pay. And I filled out the first page of the application. Name, Sarah Montgomery. Age, 45. Previous education. High school diploma. Work experience, 23 years in food service. Under, why do you want to attend this program? I wrote, because I've spent my whole life making sacrifices. It's time I made something for myself. I didn't know what would happen with Emma, whether she'd really set boundaries with Victoria, whether our relationship would heal completely, whether she'd be able to build the life she wanted while staying true to where she came from. But I knew what would happen with me. I was going to keep going, keep building, keep becoming. Not Emma's mother. Not the invisible woman serving drinks at other people's celebrations. Not the one who made herself smaller so others could feel bigger. Just Sarah. And for the first time in 23 years, that felt like enough. I've told you my story. The whole truth of it. The pain, the betrayal, the moment I decided I mattered too. Some of you might think I was too harsh. That I humiliated my daughter on her wedding day. That I should have handled it privately. That a mother should forgive anything. Others might think I wasn't harsh enough. That I should have cut Emma off completely. That she didn't deserve my forgiveness. That blood isn't thicker than betrayal. But here's what I learned. There's no perfect way to love someone who's hurt you. There's no guidebook for how to maintain your dignity while still keeping your heart open. You just do the best you can with what you have. Emma and I are rebuilding. Slowly. Carefully. With therapy and honest conversations and Sunday dinners where we're learning to see each other as whole people, not just as mother and daughter. And me? I start culinary school next month. I'm terrified and excited and still figuring out who Sarah Montgomery is when she's not defined by sacrifice. But I know one thing for certain. I will never make myself invisible again. Not for anyone. Not even for love. So I'll ask you this. Have you ever made yourself smaller to make someone else comfortable? Have you ever hidden who you are because someone told you that you weren't good enough? And if so, when did you decide you were done? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to hear your stories. Because we all deserve to be seen.